Arrakis Minor wasn't the legendary desert world from old myths. It was a marginal colony orbiting a dim orange star, settled by believers who thought they could recreate sacred ecosystems through careful terraforming and stubborn faith. They were wrong. The dunes were thinner, the storms less violent, the sky too pale. But somehow, through divine accident or cosmic irony, the worms had taken root. Not the colossal titans of legend. These were smaller, leaner, barely 30 meters at maturity. Still large enough to swallow a shuttle, but small by holy standards. I was there as a student, studying their reproductive cycles. The official position of the Empire was that the worms were dangerous megafauna to be contained and harvested for biochemical research. The colonists believed otherwise. To them, Shai-Hulud was not an animal. It was judgment. It was memory. It was the desert thinking. The discovery of a juvenile nest was supposed to be a breakthrough. Instead, it became a massacre. A corporate security division arrived under the pretense of assisting our research. They deployed sonic drills into the dunes, flushing out a cluster of hatchlings to capture and dissect. The mother came. I will never forget the sound. It wasn't a roar. It was vibration. The sand liquefied under my boots. The sky itself seemed to tremble as 30 meters of armored muscle erupted from the dunes. The security division opened fire. They died in under a minute. The worm collapsed shortly after, riddled with railgun rounds and plasma burns. When the storm settled, there was silence, except for the faint, wet clicking from beneath the sand. The hatchlings had survived. Most of them. The Empire ordered extermination. Containment of a hostile species. I disobeyed. I found the smallest one still alive, writhing in a shallow pit, its segmented body glistening like burnished bronze. It was barely longer than my forearm. It should have died. Hatchlings required deep desert pressure and specific mineral compositions to survive. But it looked at me. Not with eyes. Worms don't have eyes, but with awareness. A subtle shift in its body, a ripple that resonated in my bones. I told myself I was preserving a specimen. I told myself I was saving knowledge. I didn't admit the truth. I couldn't bear to see another one die. The smuggling. Getting him off-world was easier than it should have been. Imperial bureaucracy is a hydra with too many heads and too little attention span. I registered the terrarium as sediment sample with reactive fauna. I falsified mineral composition readings to justify electromagnetic containment fields. He adapted quickly. I fed him microprocessed silicate substrates and trace organics. He consumed them with astonishing efficiency, leaving behind crystalline excretions that refracted light into faint rainbows. He grew. By the time I reached the trade hub of Persephone Station, he was nearly a foot long. I named him Ash. It felt less blasphemous than calling him Shai-Hulud. Middle, Persephone Station. Persephone's was a ring of metal and ambition orbiting a gas giant, a crossroads for merchants, mercenaries, and the morally flexible. It was also where I planned to disappear. Sell some research data. Buy passage to a frontier colony. Release Ash somewhere remote and survivable. Simple. Except nothing is simple when you're harboring a creature considered both sacred icon and biohazard. I rented a cramped habitat module in the lower tiers. The terrarium sat near the viewport, artificial sand shimmering under heat lamps. Ash burrowed in tight spirals, occasionally surfacing to test the glass with gentle taps. That's when she knocked. 3 sharp raps against my door. I froze. Imperial agents don't knock politely, but smugglers sometimes do. I checked the corridor feed. A woman stood outside, mid-30s, dark hair tied back, wearing a civilian mechanic's jumpsuit stained with engine grease. Not security. Still dangerous. I opened the door halfway. Yes. She held up a datapad. You're Kadren? Former Survey Corps. My pulse spiked. Depends who's asking. She smiled faintly. Lyra Vance. Station maintenance. And, unofficially, someone who reads ship manifests for fun. That was not reassuring. I noticed your cargo declaration, she continued. Reactive fauna? From Arrakis Minor. My throat tightened. And, I asked. And I was curious. Curiosity kills more than cats. She glanced past me into the room. Her eyes landed on the terrarium. Ash chose that moment to surface. He rose from the sand in a delicate spiral, segmented body glinting under amber light. His mouth, ringed with tiny crystalline teeth, opened in a silent pulse as he tasted the air through vibrations. Lyra's breath caught. I stepped in front of the tank. It's classified research material. That's a Shai-Hulud, she whispered. Technically, a juvenile sand annelid. Her gaze snapped to mine. Don't insult it. I blinked. That was not the reaction I expected. Most people responded with fear, or greed, or immediate attempts to call security. She stepped closer to the glass, slow and deliberate. Ash tilted toward her, body rippling. You shouldn't have brought him here, she said softly. Him. Not it. I didn't have a choice, I replied. There's always a choice. The words hit harder than they should have. She turned to me, eyes sharp now. Do you understand what you've done? Saved a species? Endangered one. I bristled. The Empire was going to exterminate them. And you think hiding one in a box is salvation? Her voice wasn't mocking. It was angry. I'd prepared for accusations of smuggling, blasphemy, biological terrorism. I hadn't prepared for moral outrage. He'll die on Arrakis Minor, I said. The ecosystem is unstable. Corporate mining will tear it apart within a decade. And here, she shot back, in a metal ring orbiting a gas giant. I didn't answer, because she was right. The revelation. Lyra didn't report me. Instead, she came back the next day. And the next. She brought mineral samples from different sectors of the station, trace silicates from asteroid shipments, exotic dust collected from external hull plating. We tested which compositions Ash preferred. He reacted most strongly to particles harvested from deep space debris, ancient, preplanetary dust. He's not just eating, she observed one evening as Ash coiled around a new sample. He's selecting. Of course he is. It's instinct. She shook her head. No. It's memory. I frowned. Worms don't have centralized brains. Neither do some distributed AI systems, she countered. Consciousness isn't limited to a single node. You think he's conscious. I think he's connected. To what? The desert was light years away. But that night, as Persephos rotated in artificial twilight, the station shuddered. A low vibration hummed through the metal floors. Most residents blamed routine docking maneuvers. I knew better. Ash was thrashing inside the terrarium, not in panic, but in resonance. The vibration wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from him. The next day, reports spread of minor structural instabilities in the lower tiers. Sand-like particulate matter had accumulated in ventilation shafts, though no one could trace its origin. Lyra stared at the data logs, pale. He's terraforming, she whispered. That's impossible. Is it? We watched as Ash burrowed, not just through sand, but through reality's assumptions. Microscopic analysis revealed that the particles in his waste were reorganizing station alloys at the molecular level, subtly shifting carbon matrices into silicate analogs. He wasn't adapting to the station. He was adapting the station to him. The confrontation. It didn't take long for someone else to notice. Station security pinged my module with a request for inspection. Environmental anomaly in your sector. Lyra was there when the message came through. They'll take him, I said. Yes. And dissect him. Probably. Ash coiled tightly beneath the sand, as if sensing our fear. Lyra placed her hand against the glass. We can't let them. You were the one who said I endangered him by bringing him here. I was. And now? Her jaw tightened. Now I understand. Understand what? She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something like awe in her eyes. He's not just a creature, she said. He's a seed. The word hung in the air. A seed for what? I asked. For wherever he decides to grow. Security arrived within the hour. 2 officers in gray armor, polite but firm. Routine inspection, one said. They didn't even try to hide their shock when they saw Ash. Weapons came up instantly. Step away from the containment unit. Ash rose from the sand, taller now, nearly 2 feet. His body vibrated, a deep harmonic hum that rattled the glass. Don't fire, I warned. Sir, that organism is classified as a level 7 hazard. It's also sacred to 500 million colonists, Lyra snapped. The officers hesitated. In that hesitation, Ash struck, not at them, but at the floor. The terrarium shattered outward in a controlled burst of force, as if the glass had chosen to yield. Sand spilled across the metal plating. Ash hit the deck and began to burrow through solid steel. The floor rippled like water as he disappeared beneath it. Alarm screamed. The descent. Persephone Station went into lockdown. Structural integrity warnings flashed across every screen. Microfractures spiderwebbed through support beams. Sections of the lower ring began converting into silicate composite under impossible pressure shifts. He's accelerating, Lyra breathed. Can you track him? I asked. She pulled up maintenance schematics, overlaying seismic readings. A spiraling pattern emerged, descending toward the station's core reactor. If he destabilizes that. He won't, she said firmly. How do you know? Because he's not destroying.
She zoomed in.
Where Ash passed, metal transformed, but it didn't weaken. It crystallized into something denser, more resilient. Structural stress readings actually decreased along his path. He's reinforcing the station, she said in disbelief. Security forces mobilized, sealing bulkheads in a futile attempt to contain a creature that treated matter like suggestion. I made a decision. I'm going after him. That's insane. So is smuggling a god. We descended. Maintenance shafts, following the harmonic tremor. At the core reactor chamber, we found him. Ash coiled around the reactor's outer casing, body glowing faintly from internal bioluminescence. The reactor's hum had shifted pitch, syncing with his vibration. Data readouts scrolled across Lyra's pad. He's stabilizing energy fluctuations, she murmured. The reactor's efficiency just increased by 12%. I stepped closer. Ash, I whispered. He turned, not with eyes, but with attention. For a heartbeat, I felt something brush against my thoughts. Not words. Not images. Intent.
Growth.
Connection. He's linking with the station systems, Lyra said. Using electromagnetic resonance. Can he control it? I don't think control is the right word. Security flooded the chamber, weapons raised. Stand down, the captain barked. We're neutralizing the organism. Wait, Lyra shouted. Look at the readings. They didn't. They fired. Plasma bolts struck Ash's armored segments. He convulsed, a shockwave rippling through the chamber. Lights flickered. Gravity stuttered. I threw myself in front of him without thinking. Stop, I screamed. The captain hesitated. Ash's vibration intensified, not in aggression, but in response. The reactor's output spiked. For a terrifying second, I thought he would overload it. Instead, the energy surge flowed into him. His body expanded, segments elongating, splitting, multiplying. Crystalline structures erupted from his sides, anchoring into the reactor housing. He wasn't feeding on energy.
He was channeling it.
The entire station trembled, and then steadied. Silence fell. Ash had grown to nearly 10 meters, coiled protectively around the reactor core. His body fused seamlessly with the surrounding structure, creating a living lattice that hummed with contained power. Lyra stared at the displays, tears in her eyes. He's become the heart of the station. The captain lowered his weapon. "What the hell is that thing?" he whispered. I swallowed. "Shai-Hulud," I said softly. "Ending a new desert." Persephone did not collapse.
It evolved.
Over the following weeks, Ash integrated deeper into the station's infrastructure. He extended microfilaments through conduits, reinforcing structural weak points, optimizing energy distribution. The silicate transformation spread, but in patterns of strength, not decay. Scientists arrived. Theologians followed. Corporate executives circled like vultures. But the station's residents, mechanics, merchants, families, saw the truth in the data. Power outages ceased. Structural fatigue vanished. Even life support systems stabilized beyond previous tolerances. Ash was no longer a hidden specimen. He was Persephone's guardian. I expected Lyra to resent me. Instead, she stood beside me on the observation deck, watching as new crystalline growths shimmered along the inner ring like frozen lightning. "You were right," I said quietly. "I endangered him."
"And you were right," she replied.
"He wouldn't have survived where he was." We watched a cargo freighter dock smoothly, guided by subtly enhanced gravitational stabilizers Ash had influenced. "What happens when he outgrows the station?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Maybe the station will outgrow itself with him." Terraforming proposals flooded in. Plans to seed other stations with engineered silicate matrices inspired by Ash's excretions. Entire new habitats designed around living cores. Not deserts of sand. Deserts of stars. One evening, as the gas giant storms churned below, I felt that familiar brush against my mind again. Not as faint this time. Gratitude. Expansion.
Choice.
I placed my hand against the crystalline wall, feeling the steady hum beneath my palm. "You asked about my tiny Shai-Hulud," I said to Lyra softly. She laughed under her breath. "He's not tiny anymore." "No," I agreed. "He's not." I had expected fear. I had expected condemnation. I hadn't expected her to see what I couldn't, that Ash was never meant to be hidden. He was never meant to be preserved like a relic. He was meant to grow. Persephone Station began to change its official designation within the year. No longer a trade hub. No longer a mining relay. It became the first symbiotic habitat, a partnership between engineered civilization and living megafauna. Pilgrims came to witness the living reactor. Engineers came to study the molecular restructuring. Children pressed their hands against crystalline walls, feeling the gentle vibration of something ancient and new all at once. As for me, I stayed. Not as a smuggler. Not as a fugitive. But as a caretaker of a being who no longer needed caring. Sometimes, late at night, when the station rotates into artificial darkness and the stars burn cold beyond the viewport, I think back to that day in the dunes. To the mother worm rising in fury. To the hatchling twisting in the sand. I had thought I was saving him. Now I understand. He saved us. And somewhere, deep in the metal bones of Persephone's, the once tiny Shai-Hulud hums, a reminder that even gods can begin small, and that sometimes the most dangerous question anyone can ask is, "What is that?" because the answer might just change the shape of the world. The first time the station council voted to rename Persephone, the motion failed by a single count.
Too radical, they said. Too symbolic.
Trade partners might interpret it as instability. The second vote passed unanimously. Persephone Station became Persephone's symbiotic habitat, the first human installation officially classified as a living integrated structure. Ash did not care about the name, but he felt the shift. You could measure it in resonance. In the way the crystalline lattice along the inner ring brightened when children laughed nearby. In the subtle harmonic adjustments when new ships docked, Ash compensating for mass, for vibration, for the stress of arrival. He had stopped being a secret. He had stopped being mine. And that was the hardest part. The inquiry. The Empire did not ignore miracles. A delegation arrived 3 months after the reactor incident. Scientists in immaculate white, military observers in restrained gray, and a single political envoy whose smile never reached her eyes. They convened in the primary assembly chamber, beneath a vaulted ceiling now threaded with translucent crystalline veins. I stood before them with Lyra at my side. You illegally transported a restricted organism. The envoy began smoothly. One categorized as a planetary scale biohazard. I transported a juvenile specimen to prevent extermination, I replied. She tapped her datapad. That specimen has since altered the structural composition of this station and integrated with its primary power core. Yes. And you consider this a success? Lyra stepped forward before I could answer. Power efficiency up 21%. Structural integrity improved across all sectors. Atmospheric recyclers stabilized by harmonic modulation. 0 fatalities since integration. A pause. The scientists whispered among themselves, fascinated despite their efforts to remain clinical. The envoy's gaze shifted to the shimmering walls. And what happens, she asked quietly, if it decides to withdraw? The question hung heavy. I thought of the dunes, of the mother worm dying under railgun fire, of Ash's first hesitant ripple beneath my palm. He won't, I said. You can't guarantee that. No, I admitted. But neither can you guarantee that any sentient being won't leave if mistreated. The envoy studied me carefully. You're suggesting sentience. I'm suggesting relationship. Silence. Then, as if summoned by the tension itself, the chamber hummed. Not loudly, not violently, just enough to vibrate the air in our lungs. The crystalline veins overhead pulsed with soft amber light. Ash was listening. The envoy's composure faltered for the first time. What was that? One of the scientists breathed. Consent, Lyra said gently.
Growth.
The Empire did not seize Ash. They could not justify it, not with the data, not with the public interest surging across the network. News of Persephone spread like wildfire. Some called it heresy. Some called it evolution. Within a year, 3 additional stations petitioned to begin symbiotic integration trials using engineered silicate substrates derived from Ash's crystalline secretions. He did not produce offspring, not in the biological sense. Instead, he shed nodules, compact crystalline cores humming with dormant potential.
Seeds.
Each one required careful calibration, environmental tuning, and, above all, patience. Most failed. One succeeded. A mining outpost on the fringe of the belt reported harmonic stabilization within weeks of implantation. No dramatic transformations. No living lattice spiraling across corridors. Just subtle strengthening. A beginning. Ash felt it. The moment the second core activated, the hum within Persephone shifted, deepened, like a chord gaining a new note. Connection across vacuum. Across light minutes of empty space. He was no longer alone.
The choice.
2 years after I first smuggled him in a glass box, I stood once more in the reactor chamber. It no longer looked industrial. The metal had transformed entirely into interlocking crystalline arches, forming a cathedral of refracted light. At the center, Ash's massive body coiled in layered spirals around the reactor heart. He had grown again 20 meters now, not the titanic scale of his ancestors, but far beyond the fragile hatchling I once carried. Lyra joined me, boots echoing softly. "They've offered you a position," she said. "I know. Head of Symbiotic Research for the Imperial Council. Unlimited funding. Access to frontier worlds. All contingent on one clause. Supervised relocation of Ash to a controlled research facility." "He won't go," I said. "They believe you can persuade him." I approached the inner lattice and placed my hand against its warm surface. The vibration flowed through my bones, steady, immense, alive. "I spent my life studying alien organisms," I murmured, "cataloging them, defining them, containing them." The hum softened, almost curious. "I thought saving you meant controlling your environment, minimizing variables, a pulse. But you were never meant to be minimized." Behind me, Lyra's voice was quiet. "So, what will you tell them?" I closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my lids, I felt it again, not words, not images. Space. Vast and patient. Not just the station. Not just the belt. Stars. Distances measured not in kilometers, but in possibility. "You don't belong to the Empire," I whispered. The hum intensified, resonating through the chamber. "You don't belong to me." The crystalline arches brightened, light cascading like frozen waterfalls. "You choose," I said softly. For a long moment, nothing changed. Then the floor trembled. Not in alarm. In preparation. The expansion. Over the following weeks, construction crews worked in synchronized awe. Persephos began extending new docking spines, long, reinforced corridors laced with ash-grown crystal. Officially, it was infrastructure expansion. Unofficially, it was preparation. The Empire withdrew its relocation proposal when Ash refused to disengage from the reactor core. Every attempt to simulate detachment resulted in destabilizing energy fluctuations that only he could correct. The message was clear. He would not be moved like cargo again. Instead, he began to grow outward. Sections of the outer hull transformed into hardened silicate structures capable of withstanding micrometeor impacts without shielding. Microfilaments extended along docking arms, interfacing with incoming ships, improving navigation precision beyond any existing AI. Then came the moment no one predicted. A deep space exploration vessel docked, a prototype designed for decades-long autonomous travel. Its captain requested integration assistance from Ash's lattice to optimize structural endurance. When the ship's systems linked to the crystalline interface, the harmonic resonance spiked to levels we had never recorded. Ash's body pulsed with brilliant light. Across the station, every crystalline vein answered. And far beyond, light minutes away, the second symbiotic outpost echoed the signal. A network. Not cables. Not quantum relays. Resonance. The exploration vessel undocked 2 days later, hull partially infused with stabilized silicate matrices. As it drifted away, Ash's hum followed it, faint but persistent. He was reaching, not physically, not yet, but through vibration, through structure, through shared material memory. The desert was no longer sand. It was space itself. The last conversation. On the night before the exploration vessel made its first faster-than-light jump, I returned alone to the reactor chamber. "I was afraid of your power," I admitted aloud. The hum was low, attentive. "I thought if anyone saw you, They'd destroy you, or worship you, or both. Light rippled along the crystalline walls. I didn't expect someone to ask about you, I said with a small smile. And I definitely didn't expect her reaction. Lyra's outrage that first day. Her refusal to let me reduce him to specimen status. She had seen the seed when I only saw the survivor. You were never tiny, I whispered. I was. The vibration deepened, warm, encompassing. For a fleeting second, my mind expanded outward, through corridors, through hull plating, into the cold sweep of stars beyond. I felt the exploration vessel accelerating, felt the distant echo of the second habitat responding, felt the potential of 100 more. Ash was not bound to this station anymore. He was becoming something larger than any single world. Not a god of sand, a gardener of void. Years later, children born on Persephos grew up pressing their hands to living walls. Engineers trained in harmonic calculus instead of purely mechanical design. Pilgrims still came, but they left with blueprints, not prayers. Symbiotic habitats dotted the belt within a decade. Not all were anchored by beings like Ash. Most relied on derivative crystalline matrices, simplified and scaled. But every successful integration carried a trace resonance, an echo of the first. I never accepted the imperial post. Instead, I became something stranger, a liaison between biology and architecture, between instinct and intention. And Ash, he continued to grow. Not explosively, not destructively, deliberately. When the first Interstellar gate prototype required stabilization beyond conventional energy dampening, it was Ash's harmonic network that made the transit survivable. Ships began venturing farther than ever before, carrying fragments of living lattice within their hulls, carrying the hum of a once tiny Shai-Hulud into uncharted darkness. Sometimes I stand at the observation deck, watching new vessels depart. The gas giant churns below, storms flashing in amber spirals. Behind me, the station pulses, alive, steady, patient. People still ask about him. What is he, they say. I smile. He's what happens when you stop trying to own the future. They rarely understand at first. That's all right. I didn't either. All I knew, back in that desert, was that I couldn't let one more worm die. I never expected that saving a hatchling would reshape civilization. I never expected that someone would look at my tiny Shai-Hulud and see not danger, but destiny. And I certainly never expected that the universe would answer her curiosity with expansion instead of destruction. The exploration vessel's latest transmission arrives as I watch, a faint harmonic ping through the lattice. They've reached another system. They're deploying a new crystalline core. The hum across Persephos deepens, resonant and vast. A network of living strength stretching across the stars. Ash vibrates beneath my feet, no longer confined, no longer hidden. Growing, always growing. And somewhere, in the endless dark between suns, the desert is beginning again.